Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive.
Today we're going deep on a topic that's got everyone talking,
Yeah,
deep work.
definitely a hot topic these days.
We're diving into Cal Newport's book, Deep Work, to figure out
What it really is.
why it matters so much right now.
And how we can all learn to do it better.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Everyone's worried about AI taking jobs,
Right.
but maybe what we should be focused on,
It's something much more human.
the ability to concentrate and think deeply.
It's like we've forgotten about that in the age of endless distraction.
Exactly.
Yes.
What exactly do we mean by deep work?
Well, deep work is about those professional activities.
That require intense.
Undistracted focus.
Okay.
Think of it as pushing your cognitive abilities to their absolute limit.
It's about creating things that are truly valuable.
Honing skills that are hard to come by
Mm-hmm.
and producing work that can't be easily replicated.
It's the opposite of what we call shallow work.
Which is more about just kind of ticking things off a to-do list.
Right.
Going to endless meetings.
Or generally just like feeling busy without actually accomplishing much.
So it's that focus.
That intense focus.
Yes.
That makes the difference.
Precisely. It's like if you use a magnifying glass to focus sunlight.
You can create intense heat.
Right.
Deep work is kind of like channeling your mental energy in that same way.
Got it.
It's that intensity that allows you to produce really high quality work.
Work that truly stands out.
Okay, so it's a powerful stuff.
But why is it suddenly so important now?
I mean, people have always needed to focus to do good work, right?
We did, but this is where it gets interesting.
Newport argues that we're in what he calls the intelligent machine age,
Okay.
where technology is reshaping the economy in some pretty profound ways.
Mm-hmm.
And in this landscape, deep work is becoming not just an advantage,
But really a necessity.
a necessity. Wow.
He calls this shift the Great Restructuring.
Or some people are going to be left behind.
While others are really going to thrive.
Okay, that sounds a bit ominous.
Or the people.
Who are going to thrive.
He highlights three key groups.
Okay.
The first are what he calls the high-skilled workers.
These are people who've honed very specific skills through deep work
Skills that allow them to generate insights and solve problems.
that are just beyond the reach of algorithms and artificial intelligence.
Interesting.
Think of someone like Nate Silver
Using deep work to really master statistics
and predict election outcomes.
with amazing accuracy.
Yeah, he's known for that.
It's not just about being smart.
It's about cultivating that deep understanding and expertise.
Through intense, focused effort.
Makes sense.
The second group
Okay.
are what he calls the superstars.
These are individuals who've reached the pinnacle of their professions,
Wow.
often through years of really dedicated deep work.
Okay.
Think David Heinemeier Hansson.
The creator of Ruby on Rails.
He's not just a good programmer.
Right.
He's a master craftsman
And that mastery comes from years
of focused practice.
and pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Wow, so there's levels to this
It's that level of excellence.
that makes them just invaluable.
Yep.
In a world where, frankly, mediocrity is becoming increasingly automated.
Right. Because if anyone can do it,
Exactly.
a machine can probably do it.
And do it better
Right.
and faster.
Okay, so we've got high-skilled workers, superstars,
And then the third group.
are the capital owners. These
Uh-huh.
are the people who recognize and invest in the businesses
An
who
individual
are creating value.
in this new economy,
They see the potential of deep work.
and they understand its significance.
In a world where automation is changing the rules.
Interesting.
Think of someone like Mark Andreessen.
The venture capitalist,
He's betting on people and companies.
who are using deep work to build these innovative new products and services.
Right.
They understand that the future belongs to those who can think deeply.
And create things that are truly valuable.
Okay, so it's like this hidden key
To success.
in the intelligent machine age.
You either master it yourself,
Or you become a master through deep work.
or you fund those who do.
That's a good way to put it.
But here's the catch.
You mentioned that deep work is becoming rare.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I mean, we have all this technology now.
Shouldn't that make us more productive?
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But the irony is...
The very technology that promises to free up our time
Right.
is often the biggest obstacle.
To doing deep work.
Ah.
Our lives are just filled with distractions.
From the constant ping of notifications,
To the pressure to be always on.
always available.
Exactly.
And these open plan offices,
Oh, yeah.
designed for collaboration,
They often just end up being breeding grounds.
for distraction.
Yeah. I can totally relate to that.
It feels like we're constantly bombarded
With information,
and requests for our attention
it's so hard to just shut it all out.
and really focus.
Exactly, and that's where Newport's concept of the metric black hole comes in.
The idea that in knowledge work,
It's often hard to measure the true value of deep work.
yeah, how do you measure that?
Exactly.
It's much easier to focus on shallow tasks.
That are easily quantifiable,
Okay.
even if they're not actually contributing that much
Right.
to the bottom line.
So we end up prioritizing the things that are easy to measure,
Right.
even if they're not actually the most important things.
I've definitely been guilty of that.
I think we all have at some point.
And that leads to what Newport calls busyness as proxy for productivity.
The idea that we feel the need to appear busy.
To prove our worth,
Right.
even if we're not actually producing anything of real value.
Right.
So we end up just prioritizing shallow work.
Simply because it's more visible.
So we're all running around,
Like chickens with their heads cut off.
but not actually accomplishing anything meaningful.
Yeah, that's kind of a depressing thought.
Yeah, it is.
It is a little depressing.
But it's true.
And this is a problem that's pervasive.
Even in fields that traditionally require deep work.
Like what?
Well, Newport talks about Alyssa Rubin,
A New York Times reporter.
who was essentially pressured to tweet constantly.
Really?
Yeah.
Even though that activity wasn't really contributing.
To her core work as a journalist.
It's this pressure to be constantly connected,
And producing content.
even if it's superficial.
That's eroding our ability to focus on what truly matters.
So it's this vicious cycle,
Where we're rewarded for being busy.
even if that busyness is actually preventing us
Right.
from doing our best work.
It is a vicious cycle.
But Newport argues that we need to fight back against this trend.
He does.
And he makes a really compelling case for why it's worth the effort,
And he approaches this from several different angles.
starting with what he calls the neurological argument,
Okay.
drawing on the work of Winifred Gallagher.
Or let's hear it.
What has neuroscience had to say about all of this?
Gallagher's research suggests that focusing on shallow work.
Actually puts us in a negative mental state.
Really?
We end up feeling stressed, overwhelmed
Yeah.
by this constant distraction.
It's like we're training our brains.
To be in this perpetual state of unease and anxiety.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
That's like we're constantly juggling a million things in our heads
And we never really get a chance to just relax.
and focus on one thing at a time.
Exactly. But the good news is,
Okay.
Gallagher also found that when we focus on what's meaningful,
Even in the face of difficult circumstances.
and she's speaking from experience,
She battled cancer.
we actually experience greater happiness and satisfaction.
Wow.
It's a reminder that how we direct our attention.
Has a profound impact on our overall well-being.
So by choosing to focus on what's truly meaningful,
We're not just improving our work.
we're also improving our mental health.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And that ties in with Csikszentmihalyi's research on flow.
Which Newport also discusses in the book.
Okay.
Csikszentmihalyi found that deep work is a prime activity.
For achieving those flow states,
Right.
those moments of complete absorption
And effortless concentration.
where you kind of lose track of time
And feel completely immersed.
in what you're doing.
It's that feeling of being in the zone.
Exactly.
And these flow states are directly linked to feelings of deep satisfaction and happiness.
I love those moments.
We all do.
But they feel harder and harder to come by.
It's the sad truth.
Yeah.
But the good news is,
We can train ourselves to achieve flow more consistently.
by prioritizing deep work,
And it's not just about achieving those peak performance moments.
it's about connecting to a deeper sense of meaning and purpose
Okay.
in our work.
And Newport draws on the work of Hubert Dreyfus and Sean Kelly.
To explore this idea of craftsmanship.
Interesting.
What's the connection there?
It's the idea that when we engage in deep work.
We tap into the sense of craftsmanship,
Okay.
where we find meaning in the inherent value of the work itself,
It's not about forcing meaning onto our work.
but rather about discovering the meaning that's already there.
It's like the difference between a factory worker assembling parts
Right.
versus a skilled artisan crafting something beautiful and unique.
I love that analogy.
It's about approaching your work with intention and skill
Exactly.
and a deep respect for the craft.
That I have to admit.
The thought of actually carving out time for deep work
In my crazy, always-on life,
feels daunting,
I hear you. It's definitely a challenge.
but it's not impossible
And luckily, Cal Newport offers some practical strategies.
for making it happen.
Okay, good.
We need some strategies.
We'll dive into those in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, I'm ready for those strategies.
You've inspired to reclaim my focus.
And start doing more of that deep, meaningful work.
Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Sounds good. So you're ready to embrace the power of deep work.
But wondering how to actually make it happen
Yeah,
in your busy life.
exactly.
Well,
The first step might surprise you.
it's about learning to embrace boredom.
Wait, boredom?
How does that help with deep work?
Think about it.
We're so used to constant stimulation these days,
Right.
always checking our phones,
Scrolling through social media,
that our brains have almost forgotten.
how to just be.
Yeah, we reach for our phones at the slightest hint of boredom.
Exactly.
It's like some kind of emergency.
Like we're missing out on something if
Yeah.
we don't check it.
But all this digital stimulation,
It actually weakens our ability to focus deeply
it's like a muscle
that we've let atrophy.
from lack of use.
Okay, so to strengthen that focus muscle,
We actually need to practice being bored.
it sounds a little counterintuitive,
It does.
but hear me out.
Okay.
If we never allow ourselves to experience boredom
We never give our brains a chance to rest and recharge.
and those moments of quiet contemplation.
Even if they feel a little uncomfortable at first,
Yeah.
they're actually crucial for deep thinking.
Okay, so I get the logic.
But how do we actually do that?
Just sit around staring at the wall.
There are more engaging ways to do it.
Thankfully,
Okay, good.
one thing Newport suggests is implementing what he calls an internet Sabbath.
What's that?
This involves disconnecting from the internet.
For set periods of time,
Okay.
maybe a whole day each week,
A whole day.
or even just a few hours each evening
Give your brain a break.
from that constant stream of digital information
Okay.
and see what happens.
I could maybe try a few hours each evening.
Like a digital detox before bed.
Exactly.
Start small.
And see how it feels.
You might be surprised at how much you actually enjoy
That break?
from the digital noise.
Interesting.
Another interesting strategy
Okay.
is something Newport calls productive meditation.
Productive meditation.
This involves using low-intensity activities,
Like what?
like going for a walk.
Taking a shower
Okay.
to actually think deeply.
So instead of zoning out during my walk,
I should be thinking about work.
well, in a relaxed kind of way,
The key is not to force it.
don't try to actively problem solve
Okay?
during your walk or your shower,
Just let your mind wander.
and kind of explore.
Different aspects of the problem.
Mm.
You might be surprised at the insights that come up.
When you just give your brain some space to breathe,
I think I get my best ideas.
when I'm away from my desk.
Doing something totally unrelated to work.
Precisely.
And by incorporating productive meditation into your routine.
You can actually tap into that subconscious processing power.
More intentionally.
Okay.
I like that. Now,
Yeah.
we can't talk about deep work.
Without addressing the elephant in the room,
Social media.
the ultimate distraction.
I spend way too much time scrolling.
Yeah.
Even when I should be working.
You're not alone.
But here's the thing.
Social media is designed to be addictive.
Oh, yeah.
It is
Those
like
notifications.
the endless feeds
They're all engineered to keep us hooked.
and that constant distraction.
Is kryptonite to deep work?
So what do?
Quit social media completely.
Well, Newport suggests
Experimenting with quitting.
for 30 days,
30 days.
just to see how it impacts your life.
He calls it the packing party analogy.
What's that?
Imagine you're moving.
And you pack up all your social media accounts?
Like boxes.
Okay.
After 30 days.
See what you actually miss.
And what you don't.
You might be surprised at how little you actually need those services.
I might try that.
I'm curious.
And if you decide to come back to social media,
After the 30 days,
do it with intention.
ask yourself, is this tool actually serving me?
Or am I just mindlessly scrolling?
That's a great point.
Choose to engage with social media
In a way that aligns with your values and your goals.
rather than letting it control your time and your attention.
Okay, so we've learned to embrace boredom.
We've tamed the social media beast.
What's next?
The next step is to drain the shallows.
Drain the shallows.
I like that.
What does that mean?
This means systematically identifying
And eliminating.
the shallow work in our lives,
Okay.
creating more space.
For deep work.
It's about being ruthless with your time and energy.
Drain the shallows.
Sounds like a major cleanup operation.
But how do I even know what qualifies as shallow work?
Newport suggests applying what he calls the college graduate test. Okay,
Ask yourself.
could a recent college graduate learn to do this task?
In a few months,
If the answer is yes,
it's probably shallow work.
okay,
Think about ways to eliminate
or delegate those
or
tasks
free up your time and your mental energy.
for more valuable work
Wow, a lot of my day is filled with tasks.
that could be done by someone else.
Another effective strategy
Okay.
is fixed schedule productivity.
Fixed schedule productivity.
What's that?
This involves setting a firm quitting time.
Each day,
Okay.
and then working backward
Figuring out how to be most productive.
within those set hours.
Well, it's about setting boundaries around my work.
Exactly.
It forces you to prioritize.
And be more intentional with your time.
Less about working longer.
More about working smarter.
Exactly.
It's about creating structure and discipline
Okay.
in your workday.
Which is essential for deep work.
Got it. And finally,
Newport suggests becoming harder to reach.
harder to reach.
This doesn't mean becoming a hermit.
But it does mean setting clear boundaries
Around your time.
and communication.
This is something I think a lot of people struggle with.
I think so too.
We feel obligated.
To respond to every email immediately.
Right.
To be constantly available, but that just leads to more distraction.
And less focus.
Right.
It's about taking back control of your attention.
And deciding when and how you engage.
With the outside world,
So I'm not obligated
you are not.
to be constantly available.
I'm putting that on a Post-it note.
It's a powerful reminder.
Newport even offers some practical tips
Okay.
for implementing this.
Like creating what he calls a sender filter.
A sender filter
What's that?
for your email
This means requiring people.
to demonstrate a legitimate reason
Okay.
for contacting you.
Before you even allow them access to your inbox.
Wow, that's hardcore,
It is
but it can be effective.
in reducing that unnecessary email traffic.
So it's like setting up a bouncer at the door of my inbox,
Exactly.
only letting in the VIPs.
Okay, I like that.
And when you do send emails,
Be more intentional about it.
instead of firing off those quick replies
Take the time to craft thoughtful messages
that clearly outline the next steps,
or provide all the information the recipient needs.
so make each email count
Exactly.
rather than just adding to the noise.
I'm guilty of sending a lot of short back and forth emails.
When I probably could have just sent one
Well crafted.
email. We've all been there.
And here's a radical suggestion.
Okay.
Sometimes
It's okay to simply not respond.
what
Not every email.
requires a response
Mm.
by letting go of that need to reply to everything.
You can actually free up
A surprising amount of time.
and mental energy
I think we often feel this pressure,
to respond to everything.
even if it's not important.
Right.
It's like we're afraid of appearing rude if we
Right.
don't respond.
But
Remember, you have the right to choose.
how you spend your time,
And your attention
not every email.
deserves a piece of your mental real estate.
Okay, all these strategies are fantastic.
But before we move on,
I want to go back to something you said earlier.
this idea of setting boundaries around communication,
Right.
do you have any tips?
For how to actually do that.
Absolutely.
First and foremost,
Be clear about your availability,
let people know.
when you're available for meetings or calls,
Okay.
and when you need uninterrupted time.
For deep work.
Don't be afraid to block off time on your calendar
Focused work.
and to decline meeting requests.
That fall within those blocks.
I think a lot of people feel guilty,
About saying no to meetings.
but it's about protecting our time
Exactly.
so we can do our best work.
Okay, that makes sense.
And when you are in meetings,
Be present,
be engaged.
but also be mindful of the time.
Don't let meetings drag on unnecessarily.
Have a clear agenda.
And stick to it.
Okay.
And when the meeting is over,
Disconnect completely.
and return to your deep work.
I love these practical tips.
I'm starting to see how all these strategies,
Embracing boredom.
draining the shallows,
Setting boundaries so we can work together.
to create the space
And the mental capacity.
for deep work.
Exactly. It's all connected.
It's about recognizing that deep work
Is a skill.
that requires deliberate practice and cultivation.
It's not something that just happens.
It's something we have to actively choose.
This is also inspiring.
But I'm also feeling a little overwhelmed.
I understand.
It's a lot to take in.
Do you have any final thoughts?
For listeners who are maybe feeling
Like they're at the beginning?
of this journey,
Yeah, any advice?
remember, you don't have to implement all of these strategies.
At once.
Okay, good.
It's a lot.
Start small
Choose one or two that resonate with you.
and experiment with them.
See what works for you.
What doesn't?
That's good advice.
It's about making small, incremental changes
And gradually building up
to a more focused,
an intentional way of working.
okay,
Exactly.
can remember,
Deep work is a journey.
not a destination,
It's about continually striving to improve your focus.
and to create work.
That's both meaningful and impactful.
This has been an eye-opening conversation
I feel like I have a whole new way of thinking.
about my work.
and my life.
That's great to hear.
But before we move on to the final part,
What are your final thoughts
what's one thing listeners can take away?
from this deep dive?
If you could change just one thing today,
What would it be?
maybe it's scheduling 30 minutes of uninterrupted time,
For a challenging task.
or committing to a digital detox.
For a few hours each evening,
Okay.
the key is to start small
Be consistent
and keep experimenting.
until you find what works for you.
Love that.
Small changes
Consistently applied.
can lead to big results. Okay.
Let's take a short break
And we'll come back for the final part,
of our deep dive
where we'll explore some specific techniques
and strategies.
for integrating deep work into our lives.
Okay, we're back
Ready to talk tactics?
to actually make deep work happen.
All right, let's get practical.
Yeah.
Get into the boots on the ground strategies.
Get us
Just
from
what we're
a...
actually doing there.
Yeah, that's where the rubber meets the road, right?
Exactly.
And I think what's so inspiring about Newport's approach,
is that he doesn't just talk about deep work.
he actually lives it.
He does.
He's very open about his own struggles and successes
in trying to integrate deep work.
into his own life.
As a professor, as a
Agree.
writer.
It makes it feel very attainable,
Yeah.
not just some theoretical ideal.
Right. It's one thing to read about it.
It's another thing to see someone actually walking the walk.
Yeah.
What are some of the things he does?
Well, one thing he's a big believer in.
Is setting artificial constraints on his time.
Okay.
He avoids working at night, for example,
And he uses extended lunch breaks.
for running and reflection.
Interesting.
This might seem counterintuitive.
But by actually limiting his work hours.
He forces himself to be more focused and productive.
During the time he does have, right, it's like that saying,
Work expands.
to fill the time allotted.
Exactly.
So by setting those stricter boundaries
He's creating more space.
for deep work,
Right.
even if it seems like he's working less overall.
Precisely.
I like that.
He's also a fan of using frameworks and systems.
To really kind of structure his deep work practice.
Like what?
He talks about using a system called 40X.
Which is a framework for executing on important goals.
Okay.
It involves setting clear goals,
Tracking your progress.
holding yourself accountable
It's a way to bring structure and discipline.
to your deep work efforts.
So it's not just about finding the time.
Way.
It's about being intentional with how you use that time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now I'm curious.
What does he say about those times?
When we're feeling burned out,
Or just tired?
is it okay to take a break?
Absolutely.
In fact,
Newport actually emphasizes the importance of being lazy.
being lazy.
I like the sound of that.
And before you picture him lounging on a beach all day,
He's not talking about slacking off,
he's talking about recognizing the importance
of rest and downtime.
for recharging our mental batteries.
Okay, so it's not about pushing ourselves to the limit 24/7.
Right.
It's about finding a sustainable rhythm.
Of work and rest.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
What are some of the things he suggests?
For downtime,
It could be anything.
that helps you disconnect from work,
And recharge,
both physically and mentally.
going for a walk in nature,
Okay.
reading a book,
Having a meaningful conversation.
or even just sitting in silence.
And letting your mind relax.
Sometimes we forget about that.
Just doing nothing.
We do.
But those moments
Of stillness and quiet.
are actually crucial for deep thinking.
Exactly. It's about respecting our cognitive limits.
Newport cites research from Anders Ericsson,
Who's a leading expert on expertise.
and his work shows that even the most talented individuals,
Can only sustain deep work.
for a limited number of hours each day,
Okay, so it's not about forcing ourselves.
to work for 8 hours straight.
It's about recognizing that we have this limited amount
Have a mental energy,
each day.
and we need to use it wisely. Precisely.
So what does all of this mean for us?
For our listeners out there,
Trying to find their way
in this world of distraction,
and demands on our attention.
it means that deep work isn't just a nice to have.
It's a must-have.
If you want to thrive
Wow.
in the 21st century,
Okay.
it's about taking back control of our time,
Our attention.
choosing to focus on what's truly valuable,
Cultivating the skills.
that allow us to create work that matters.
It's not easy.
But it's worth it.
It is worth it.
It's about building a life where we're not just busy,
But where we're deeply engaged.
when fulfilled.
Where we're creating things that matter.
Exactly.
Both to ourselves.
And to the world around us.
This has been such an inspiring conversation.
I feel like I have this whole new framework.
For thinking about my work and my life.
That's great to hear.
But I'm curious.
What are your final thoughts for our listeners?
If you could change just one thing today.
What would it be?
Maybe it's scheduling 30 minutes of uninterrupted time.
For a challenging task.
There you go.
Or maybe it's committing to a digital detox.
For a few hours each evening.
The key is to start small.
Be consistent
And keep experimenting.
until you find what works for you.
I love that.
Smell changes consistently applied.
Can lead to big results.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive.
Into Cal Newport's deep work.
It's a great book
If you're looking to level up your focus,
on productivity.
definitely check it out.
And until next time.
Keep diving.